Hi, I'm Gavin, and welcome back to the Sound Project. Well, Paul, thanks so much for joining us. We got Paul Stewart from Genelec here today. And I really appreciate you taking the time to come by for the podcast.
Thanks for having me, actually. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
It's a lot of fun getting here, too.
Yeah, right? Yeah. So we've got this set up here. We're at the NAMM show here in Anaheim. And just thought it'd be great to be able to sit down with a lot of people and kind of learn their stories. So maybe tell the audience a little bit about yourself and how you got into this, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, well, just like everybody else that gets into it, I got into it by accident.
Okay, yeah.
I'm a musician. I went to Berkeley. I was studying guitar, just wanted to be a musician. Mm-hmm. But it doesn't always work like that, And then lo and behold, someone asked me if I could help them out learning how to solder.
Yeah.
Next thing you know, you're building a patch bay wrong. Then you learn the right way. And then you get into the studios the way it was back in those days. And just led me into the audio business. Mm-hmm. And then, as you know, I'm a friendly guy, just got me into the sales thing and talking to people, getting to know so many people around the country is just the coolest thing ever. One thing led to another. 19 years ago, here I am at Genelec, and I started out as a product specialist, just learning the products. Yeah. That's when the DSP products were just coming out. Actually, I was hired just for that very purpose. Yeah. Learning about calibration with, and placement and going out and tuning rooms. To me, that was an educational all to itself. That's your 4-year degree. You could spend all that time just going out and meeting people, seeing how they work. And the cool thing is that's sort of what Genelec has always been the important thing. How do people work? Designing the speakers to understand how people work so that, they have all the right tools to make them feel as confident as they can.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's great too that you're out there doing that, you get to talk to those people and find out like what problems they're having and how they want to use the product, and then you can incorporate that back into the design. And I think too, when you're out on site like that, because we do a lot of on-site testing as well, it's a lot of problem solving. It's a lot of adjustments and tweaks that you can make and just make their situation better. So it's cool.
It's a challenge, right? I mean, I like to say that everything is a compromise.
Oh, yeah.
Right? You can't have it perfect. And if you focus too much on that, you'll never get the project done.
Exactly.
And there are a lot of great engineers out there who've mixed on far worse situations and come out with great results because they know how to listen. They know how to think things through.
Yeah. I think because combination, what we do as acoustical consultants designing rooms, it's like the speakers are always a big important part of that because it's the sum of all of the little parts that go into it. And we've done a lot of rooms together, like with Genelec products, and it's always like we've done quite a few actually recently with just soffit mounting some of your large speakers. At like Louis Bell's studio we did together.
Beautiful job.
Yeah, thank you. And then Electric Feel LA. They had the 1235As, I think, that we put in there.
Upgraded that system. That's another great thing. I saw the before and after of that.
Yeah. It was interesting before on that one because the original Genelecs, the way that they were soffit mounted, because that's just such a big part of making sure the speakers are mounted properly to get the most out of them. And before they were in the wall, but the cabinets were literally screwed into, like that's how they were held into the wall. And so, the new version now has like decoupling and a nice solid wall, because I think the previous wall was only a 1/2-inch layer drywall. So we beefed that up and had a proper soffit mounting situation. But yeah, I mean, when mounted properly, even when not mounted properly, Genelec speakers just sound amazing.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I mean, we do think it through, right? Try to think about everything about how people work and what's really important. And you mentioned the wall, and it just had me thinking too, like I've seen studios where, it's this great wall, and then you realize, well, it's fake. That wall only looks like a wall. Yeah. And then the end result is it's not adding anything.
Right.
And that's always a shame. It's like,
Well, we do get strange looks sometimes when we're like, there's going to be 5 layers of drywall or MDF or other things in this wall. And there's like, why? It's just holding the speakers there, but you got to get that solid wall so it's not a transducer as well.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, as we were talking about, as I mentioned, like compromises, right? I think the biggest compromise is bass trapping.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Because if you try to really tame a room down to its lowest possible frequency, you need a lot
Yeah, you
And
do.
who has the real estate?
Right.
So
Yeah.
you're already compromising.
Exactly.
Right?
Well, and the compromise piece of things, it's like it's not just that, and two, it's the budget. Like there's
Yeah.
sometimes people don't have the budget to do certain things, and we try to be conscious of that. I mean, there's certainly projects where we start off with a blank canvas and can pretty much do whatever we want, and that's fun and all. But I actually enjoy the challenge of just a kind of small, strange room that we
Yeah.
need to make sound as good as we can. So
And workflow, right?
Yeah.
How people work in it.
Yep.
Because that's, are they bringing people in? Are they working, hey, you're going to plug in over here. I want you to perform right here with me. Or
Right.
is there another room?
That's perfect. I'm really curious too. Like, what's your day to day like now at Genelec? You said you've been there 19 years. So,
Yeah.
I'm sure that's evolved over time.
It has, because, I was a younger old man back then. But I think that, you just get more involved, and like, I'm the senior technical sales manager now. So what does that mean? Well, I'm the senior technical when it relates to sales. You're not going to ask me very although you could, but like, I'm more into like how we're growing as a sales organization, but also making sure that, are we still supporting in the same way? Or, because like, that's the one thing that Genelec has been regarded as. I mean, we love to help people first and foremost, and we love to educate.
Yeah.
Like our acoustic tape measures. I
Yeah.
mean, how many people
love
do that?
Do you guys still do those?
We got a whole new batch over at the NAMM
no.
show. So
Okay, I've got to grab some because I have one of them, and I always thought that was the neatest thing. So talk a little bit about that.
I should have brought that, because it's kind of cool, because you're looking at frequency lengths, When I talked about joking with you about compromising, you said, sometimes it's budget. Do you ever say to the customer, well, we're going to be good down to this frequency?
Right.
You can't do that.
Right.
But it's good to know that, hey, 50 hertz gets reproduced by this little speaker. And you know how big 50 hertz is?
Right.
What is it going to affect?
Yeah.
What does 500 hertz affect?
Exactly.
There's a desk, there's this or that. So it's good to be able to kind of get the visual. And that's really what it's showing you. But it's also showing you the quarter wavelength, predictable cancellation. Speaker is X distance off the wall.
Yeah.
Those sound source comes to the wall, comes back, and can collapse on itself. If it's a quarter.
Yeah, the speaker boundary interference response. We talk about that sometimes on the podcast, and like it's because sometimes people think that front wall. Why am I putting treatment? The speakers are facing the other direction. It's like, but they radiate omnidirectionally at the low end, and it's an important surface to treat.
And the tape measure doesn't say this, but the other thing is the sidewalls.
Yeah.
The ceiling, the distance between the floor and the ceiling. And is there any absorption to help break it up, or diffusion? Where is the diffusion? And so much that is predictable, right? You walk into a room and you already know.
Yeah.
You can already predict where the big notch is going to be.
Yeah.
But not many people are aware of that when they're sort of setting things up. They might be more interested in the screen and get that into position, or the window. And not necessarily thinking about this, the equilateral, and where it is in relation to these walls.
And I find that, like, I think a lot of our customers, that's why they hire us, because they don't want to deal with that stuff. They'd rather, occupy their mind with some of the other fun things about the studio and logistics. And so we're fine with that.
Like I said to you earlier before this, I'm always relieved when, someone such as yourself is involved, because it helps keep the customer out of the weeds, because it's easy to fall into that, especially when you have a system like ours that shows you all this information. You're calibrating and you're seeing everything, and they see a big notch and they get worried about it. Well, guess what? The best studios in the world might have a deeper, wider notch than that.
True. That's the thing. No commercial studio that I know of publishes their frequency response on their website.
No,
that's not something that's done, because there's a lot of again, compromises along the way, and sometimes the studio is built and they don't have the resources or be able to shut the studio down to fix it when they finally realize that things aren't performing as well as they'd like to.
But the best thing about it is, once you know how that affects your state of mind when you're working, you're already aware of it. And it doesn't mean that it's gone forever. It could just mean that you need to roll back a foot to hear 80 hertz.
Exactly. Yep. Yeah. It's always just information. It's like if you go out and do testing, we do that a lot in, let's say, like houses of worship that we work in. And we always take a measurement at front of house, and show the front of house engineer, okay, you're at a 15 dB dip at 60 hertz, but everyone else is a 10 dB peak. So, if you're wanting to boost that, you probably don't need to. Just having that information is helpful.
It's big, right?
Yeah. So how often are you going on site to studios and things?
Not as often as I used to, although that could change, but it's just sort of been, the way things have changed in this day and age where we're all like on Teams or Zoom calls,
Yeah.
so much can happen. And with the way our systems calibrate, when you get what we have is the grade report, which is the review of the post calibration, and it shows you everything about the room. And sometimes that's great even before, if someone just puts them up and then gives you that information, right? So a lot of that can get done remotely. But I do like to get out to see, like, if it's a big job and it's the end result and someone needs to go out there and sort of see it, if I can get out to like a really cool install like that a couple of times a month, that would be great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really fun. Is it, I was really curious too, like you've been at Genelec for like 19 years. What's your favorite part of the job? Like, what do you enjoy doing the most?
Oh, I'll tell you what it is. It's when you hear the end result. When you hear someone say, Paul, I cannot tell you how much this has helped. Like, I'm working through the mix. I got it done and like it got approved just like that. The label approved it. And you really, when you see that productivity move, there's nothing better.
Yeah.
The other thing is when you meet I've been doing this for so long, go out those tape measures to schools, do presentations and stuff, and you meet these young students, and then when they go on to the real world and then they find a job and then they move on, and then 20 years later you find out that they're the VP at this consulting firm or something, like you're like,
what is going on? Yeah.
Wow.
That's awesome. Yeah. So you go out to schools and give talks a lot of times as well?
Yeah. Again, not as much as I used to, but and I kind of miss that. But that was one of my favorite things.
Yeah. That's awesome. So what kind of projects is Genelec working on right now?
It's all over the place because what we do is all over the place now. We're not just doing studios. I met you at Infocom this summer, and you were there. So that shows what you're getting into too. We're doing a lot more install stuff. So it could be a museum, it could be a restaurant, it could be a venue that has like a listening area for, whatever.
Yeah.
So it's just all over the place. And I really love those challenges. I want to get more involved into some of the corporate AV stuff because I see it's so evolving where like some of these more signature rooms have more immersive spaces, and the workflow and how people work in that is so changed since post-pandemic, right?
True.
Some people might be remote, they might be in the room. Some people might only be in for a few minutes, but they got to go.
Right.
So how does that workflow happen?
Yeah.
And not compromise or minimize the compromise.
Yeah. There's a lot of, so I think so many businesses and corporations and things like that are thinking a little outside the box about like what kind of things that they can offer at their facility, So we are getting involved a little bit more in the office and corporate environment. As well.
And trying to keep the atmosphere in a way so that people feel comfortable being there. They want to be there, whether it's the visual, but also the audio, right? How the place sounds.
Yeah.
What you might be piping through for the admin department, make them feel better or whatever.
Yeah, there's a lot that goes into that.
Yeah.
One thing I haven't heard your new speakers, like the tower speakers. I know that they had an event at Electric Feel LA, and it was like the day after we left, and so we weren't able to check it out. But how's that product been received?
Amazing. Yeah. The 8381 is what you're talking about. Yeah. And we have a pretty recent install in an immersive one with 7 of them on the
oh wow,
level.
Yeah.
So I haven't heard that one yet.
Where is that at?
In Montana.
Montana.
Yeah.
I want to go there and check
that out. I know. I was not involved in the calibration, but Stephanie, and Izzy from our office went out there.
Okay.
It just looked amazing. I'd love to see that one.
That's
I'm a little
really
jealous,
cool.
to be honest.
Yeah.
But that's a great product. It's so, as you know, like with our ones, it was sort of like, what is that? Really state of the art.
Yeah.
And this is no different. Working with coaxial, but also working with independent drivers to form a more steered directionality of your mid frequencies with the mid drivers around it. So the 8381 has a tweeter mid coax and 4 mid drivers that operate at a different level in the mids.
Yeah.
And then you've got a bass driver there and then 2 more down below that operate also, so.
When someone's making a decision to go with those speakers, are they typically going somewhere to listen to them first? Like, do you have showrooms or things that, or other studios that you can get in?
It's a challenge because when you start getting that big, where do you bring it? You can only bring it like when you missed that boat at Electric Feel. Well, those unfortunately had to get packed up and moved
And
to
moved
the next,
again.
and
Right.
it's a job, you
Yeah.
know. But we do have them in our experience center in Boston. So
Nice.
I always find it easy to say, hey, if you're really interested and there's nowhere where they are, hey,
Yeah.
we'll fly you down.
Yeah. Come
You
check
know,
it out.
have a listen in our place. May not be your place, but you know, if you're going to spend that kind of money, they should also be talking to someone like you if they haven't already.
Sure.
To some of the other things that matter in your
Yeah.
space.
I always tell people, because we get asked often, like, which speakers would you recommend? And we do try to stay out of that. Like, we're not someone who is telling you have to go with these speakers, you know. And I know that some people like the familiarity of using a certain brand and just the repeatability of that. But for us, we understand it's such a subjective decision. You know,
It
it's
can
like,
be, yeah.
especially when you get to the level of the speakers that Genelec offers, and you know, there's some other speakers manufacturers out there. But once you get to a certain level, a lot of it is about personal taste, you know, and what you really enjoy.
You might recommend the simplest thing via soffit or freestanding, depending on the room, right?
For
And
sure.
I think that's where it sort of guides you to the freestanding. Well, you know, like someone says, well, what do you think? Is the 1236 better than the 8381, or which one would you recommend? Well, they're two different beasts.
Yeah.
One you would put in a soffit, one you wouldn't.
Yes. Well, and I always just tell people, go and listen. You know, like you said, if you can go find a studio, and it's nice if it's a space that is treated well, and you can understand what you're listening to. But yeah, that's my first recommendation. If someone's in the market for some new speakers, is just try to go listen to as many of them as you can, and pick the one you like.
Yeah, and to what we were talking about like soffit design, when you're working with an acoustician who understands how they should be built, the right distances, you're going to get a great setup. If you're winging it on your own and you make all of that, and you're a carpenter and you put it in, and it's overshooting the mix position or whatever, it's just a little too late. And now, sadly, sometimes the speaker gets blamed. Right?
Yeah,
we
true.
find that you know, because we're the last thing to the ear, or the first thing to the ear, I should say, depending on which direction you're listening.
Yeah.
The speaker will get blamed.
Yeah.
And then you find out, oh no, there was a leg broken on the XLR. That's
Right.
why it was down. Oh, sorry. Oh no, your impedance was wrong. Or the signal flow, or there was something wrong with the capsule on the microphone.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many things that add up to the end result. It's, you know, the room, the speakers, all the gear. And so from our perspective, we just try to make sure that the room is functioning properly, and let all those other components do what they're good at. So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And accuracy, as good as you can get it, is the best thing you could do for your ears.
Yeah.
You know, people ask about their various opinions, but I always like to say, you know, if you're a surgeon, you know, if you were just getting operated on, the surgeon goes to the nurse, you know what? Give me the vintage glasses.
Yeah.
You know, the old ones that have scratches. Give me those. I trust those.
Yeah.
I wouldn't trust
Yeah,
those.
true. I wanted, speaking of some of the newer things, I mean, GLM's been around for a while, but how many years has that been?
Well, 20 or 19, as long as I've been there.
It seems like
it got released when I came out.
It seems like it's been just like just progressing and getting more and more advanced. I mean, I have clients all the time, like Rob Olds. Do you talk to Rob Olds by chance? Like he just recently sent me a GLM report, and we're like looking at the data, and it's just so helpful, like you said, to have that information, and also be able to make adjustments digitally, you know, to compensate for some problems that you got.
Well, technology has evolved, and so therefore it just makes it easier to do. In the beginning, you know, we were making our own sound card, or before we made our own sound card, so that, you know, the microphone was tied to that sound card and we had control of everything.
Yeah.
We would have to use a sound card that was built into the PC.
Right.
Then you'd have to make sure that the boost was off, or any other widgets that were a part of it. And some you had no control over.
Right.
So that just wouldn't work. That led us to making our own, you know, because we make the microphone, we have a compensation file it's built, so you know the known.
Yeah.
And then that was great. Once we were able to do that, it's simplified. But also when operating systems were no longer coming on a CD, you know, and the updates and cloud, then all of a sudden we could spit out a grade report, you know?
Yeah.
So it's just made things a little bit tighter to the customer to help out.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, no, it's definitely super helpful when I get that information, because I can see, you know, we are obviously modeling rooms, and if we haven't been on site to do testing yet, to have that report is just really, really helpful. So.
Yeah. And room modeling, my gosh, that's something that I've been diving a lot more into. And like, that's an area that's evolved so much, right?
Yes. Yeah, it has. I mean, and obviously it's great to be able to predict what's going on, and then I still like to go and do the testing, of course, but it's just gotten so much more accurate. Getting the testing in the real world, it allows you to make adjustments. It also allows you to see, when something's built, the contractor could have done something a little bit differently than what you'd predicted, and so, but yeah, it's pretty wild what's possible these days. 'Cause
Yeah.
a lot of times customers will ask us, well, how do you know this is going to sound good? And it's just like, well, we've studied this. We've done, it's not just modeling, but it also is just best practices of things that we've done over the years and know what mistakes to avoid. And so, yeah, it just kind of evolves.
Well, plus you're good at what you do. I mean, I've seen you golf,
thanks.
so I know that has a plan.
I don't know yet. The golf game has suffered because of the business, but that's okay. That's all right. So I guess what's next for Genelec? Like, what do you have on the horizon that I guess we're here at the NAMM show.
Yeah, well, one of the things that we've really been focusing on is headphones, right?
Yeah.
Or headphone monitoring, I should say, because we have our new headphone that's incorporated into what we call the PRM, which is your personal reference monitoring system.
Mm-hmm.
So what we're trying to do is show that, you have the monitors, and as part of GLM, now you have a controller that can control the monitors through GLM, but also can help, if you have another pair of monitors that you can route those in, or if you have a source coming from somewhere else, and then the headphone. And so Genelec won't just make a headphone.
Yeah.
It can't just be a headphone.
Yeah.
It has to be plugged into that 9320. Just like our microphone has a compensation file, and that's how it's linearized. We need to measure the impedance of every headphone so that it's tied. That serial number is tied to that 9320. If you should break those headphones, you need to get them replaced, and you get a new file if that's what's going to happen, or that gets repaired. I really don't know how that's going to work.
Yeah.
But it's just leveling more security that, what you hear from your monitors is what you're hearing here. And there's steps that you take to get there through massaging it or whatever, or using an HRTF file that we also can create through Oral ID, which will be arriving soon too. But that's another way of bringing the binaural reference to us with more sophisticated little tools to hone it in, so that if you have an immersive system, that you can rely on that. Because people move around now, or they're having to rely on headphones, even if they're in their studio.
True.
Head tracking is an important part of that. Turn your head. Does it sound the same when I turn my head in the headphone as if I were in the room?
That is true. Yeah, we recently had worked on the Grand Rapids First Studio 33.3 project. It has an immersive Genelec system in there, and it's just beautiful. We went with the white color to match the white room, and they're just super pleased with it. We're going up in a little while to film a studio tour there, and it sounds beautiful in there. So.
It looked beautiful from what you showed me. Yeah, it's a good job. Also, the Tim Henson room. Yeah, that was gorgeous.
It was, and he originally had the black Genelec speakers, and then when he switched to the white, that really just set the room off, I thought. So
it was really funny too, because we saw that room, and we were already kind of like hearing some of the work that they were doing through our friend Jonathan Morrison, who was kind of working on some stuff. And then we saw that room, like, oh my gosh, look at those 8361s. And Eric from our office just reached out to Tim, like, hey, love it. And he's like, I wish I had these in white. And we were like, we do too.
Yeah, right.
We're going to have to make that happen.
Yeah.
And it just fit the bill.
It did. It did. Yeah, because he has those like white trees behind them as well. And it's the room just really turned out nice.
Yeah. And there's another project that you mentioned to me before this with Lucy Kalantari that you're talking about, which is another, I just love the way the synergy or things happen in this industry.
Yeah, actually, I got introduced to Lucy through Warren Hewitt at Produce Like a Pro.
That's so funny.
And we're working on a new studio for her right now in her basement. So,
That's
and then
really
I just
funny.
saw her on the Artist Lounge.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was really good.
I wanted her to come in because I thought the concept of what she's working on is so good in like children's Atmos music.
Yeah.
And then wanting to be able to bring that to the kids. And we're doing an event with her in February at the Children's Museum in Manhattan.
Oh, wow.
Where we're doing a listening event for children.
That's cool.
In Atmos. So, that's the next project after this. But
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I really appreciate, again, like you taking time to come and do this with us.
My
It's always
pleasure.
cool to sit down with you and see all the neat things that Genelec is doing. And I look forward to, we have projects in the works, and I'm sure we'll have more in the future. And then I'll have to get to Boston sometime and visit your guys' facility. So
We'll do that. Absolutely. We have to promise.
Okay, I promise. I've never been, like I said off camera, I've never been to Boston before, which is wild. Been all over the world, but not to Boston. So,
Well, that's an excuse. If you come, then I can do the typical,
yeah,
like,
yeah,
what do you
can
do in
show
your
all the
Boston? Go
things.
get some chowder. We'll get some seafood.
There we go. We'll make it happen. So, thanks again for stopping by.
You got it. Absolutely. My pleasure.
Well, that's been another episode of the S.O.U.N.D Project. Thanks for being a part of it. And I'm curious if you have a favorite line of Genelec speakers, like a certain model that you gravitate towards. Comment that below, and we'll see you next week.